Welcome back to planning, implementing, and assessing curriculum. This chapter, we're going to be talking specifically about lesson planning, what that looks like, what that entails. So the purpose of education in this stance is to replace an empty mind with an open one. It's really to foster confidence in dealing with life. We're trying to give children skills that will help them in problem solving in academics, social situations, things like that. So when we're talking about early childhood education, we're trying to give them experiences that allow the child to problem solve their way with guidance and facilitation of teachers into whatever it is they're trying to do in life, whether that's building a block structure, tummy time as an infant, learning to read. All of these things are results of having the ability to problem solve. Okay, so that's what education is, to provide information, guide, support in helping children have competency to deal with the problems of life. So, what is the plan? Well, in early childhood education, we use what's called a lesson plan. We're going to talk a lot about that in the upcoming few minutes that we have. But really, a lesson or a plan is the blueprint for your teaching. And you've got to really understand why you're going to teach what you're going to teach and how you're going to teach what you're going to teach. And it isn't necessarily based on the child's developmental age, because we know that children's ages span. If you have a 6-month-old and a 12-month-old and they're in the infant realm, we know that there's a huge developmental gap in learning and opportunities and abilities, right? A 6-month-old is just learning to sit up. A 12-month-old might be running the room. And so when you create this blueprint for teaching, this plan, you've got to know what you're going to teach and why. This is why your previous assignment was trying to find out what are those developmental milestones. You have to know what child development is. You have to know the stages of development, and you have to know what each child is supposed to be doing and how to get them from point A to point B with that plan. So one of the things that teachers struggle with is, are they just creating activities, or are they creating lesson plans or formalized plans? An activity is just something you're going to do, right? We go outside, we're going to go play, and we're going to push them on the swing. That's an activity. We're going to open up the sand table. That's an activity. All right. A lesson plan has some forward thinking in it. It means the teacher has watched the students to determine what their ability levels are, and is going to create a intentional plan to get them to the next area of development, or to continue practicing a skill a child may not have mastered yet. Okay. And so part of that lesson planning is having a detailed outline for a specific learning activity. All right, and you need to listen to me. You need to know this because this is what your term project is about. Your term project specifically is about writing a series of lesson plans that include what shows on the screen: materials, and how you're going to, the procedures, how you're going to implement, and then how you're going to follow it up. There's some other components that you're going to need to add in the term project. But if you can look at the slide, you can kind of get a clearer understanding of what I'm going to be expecting for your term project. So, for example, in this lesson, they have pumpkin, and it's science and math. And this one is for preschool and elementary. So we're pretty much looking at kind of pre-K and kindergarten. And it says the materials you're going to need. Okay, I'm not going to read them all, but a variety of pumpkins, some cut in half, large bowls for pumpkin guts. I love that statement. Sturdy spoons for scooping the pumpkins. I mean, you can already see just within the written material list that there's going to be some science, some math, some fine motor, some sensory. You'll see something in there that says cooked pumpkin, small bowls or plates, spoons, and roasted pumpkin seeds, okay, which you might have to do prior. And if you've never roasted a pumpkin seed, you need to try it. Super simple. Pull them out, wash them off, sprinkle them with a little olive oil, a little salt, throw them in the oven for about 10 minutes, and they almost taste like a popcorn kind of crunch taste. I love pumpkin seeds. Okay, and you don't have to shell them. You can just eat the pumpkin seed as a whole. All right, I digress. And then your lesson has a way you're going to introduce the activity or the lesson. It's going to give procedures. We're going to talk a little bit about what's called a KWL chart, know what you want to learn and what you've learned chart. We'll talk about that in just a minute. We're going to talk about theme webbing and finding out what children know and basing your activities based on what children know. All right, so in essence, what I want to see in this class is that you understand the difference between what's just an activity and what's a lesson plan, okay? So many of our preschools run under the idea that we should have a weekly plan, a weekly lesson plan. In other words, a lot of times you'll see what are called themes. And there is some controversy with theme teaching. Theme teaching is where there's one topic and it's provided, or I'm going to use the word, it's given activities for the week, Monday through Friday, and during this time, and it's usually only in the morning. I don't see a whole lot of lesson plans for afternoon care, be that as it may. When you have a weekly plan, it's a calendar of activities to be accomplished over that week's time. And when you look at this weekly plan, you'll see at the top, it says Monday through Friday. And on the sides, every school is different, but it might have the learning stations or learning centers or play spaces. Those terms get used together. So it might be blocks, dramatic play, messy area, reading and literacy, music, science, woodworking, all sorts of things, right? Might be down on that column. And then as they go across, they say, okay, in art this week, we're going to make a pumpkin out of construction paper. We're going to make a jack-o'-lantern. We're going to make blah, 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 blah. And we have these activities that are indicated on the lesson plan based on the theme. Say this theme is pumpkin, okay? Then in science, that previous activity on the other slide would demonstrate that we're going to use that as a science and math lesson. Now that's one activity for that one day, for that one 15 or 20 minute kind of exploration. Okay, so a weekly plan is pretty common, and we use it because it keeps teachers on track, right? We use it because children want to know a pattern every day. All right, we do this, we do this, we do this. Staff like it because they can go into Pinterest, they can go into Mailbox. I'll teach you what Mailbox is, and they're able to look at all of the different activities, and they put them in a lesson plan and they call it a day without a whole lot of thought of how this developmentally is helping a child foster competence in dealing with life. Okay? Now, another way to think about it would be to have a more integrated type of lesson plan. So an integrated study plan is different than a weekly lesson plan based on a theme. An integrated study plan, and I encourage you to read your textbook on this because there's a vast difference between the two of them. It's an outline of several weeks, not just one, but several weeks of activities that span through the various content areas. All right, and what do I mean by content areas? Last week, I encouraged you to do the developmental milestones by using the Florida Birth through 5 learning standards. All right, and in Florida, we're using those standards such as fine motor, gross motor, social, emotional, approaches to learning, science, math, social studies. Those would be what we would consider content areas, okay? And so in this case, the span of activities, the span of learning isn't just 1 week. It's planning over maybe 2 or 3 weeks, maybe a month. And again, it depends on the age of your children and their interest level to what they're learning about. So in this case, I have what's called a theme web. You can see that the theme, and again, I'm using the word theme here, but the topic of study is in the middle, and that's kind of that's where your focus is. Now, each branch off of the main topic are your content areas or your domain areas. If you're in elementary, you're going to do more of that content area. Okay. If you're in early ed, we do more of that, the birth through 5 standards, or you might use it, or you can do learning centers. I've had a lot of those circles just be learning centers. So it depends on what your philosophy of education, again, we talked about that last week, and what your program is trying to work towards as a goal for what your children are learning. So in this case, we have birds. Now, I would think anyone above the age of about, I don't know, 18 months or 2 years of age have had experience seeing a bird of some sort. It could have been in a book. It could have been on a screen or a movie. It could have been what they see outside. I'm almost certain that most of your children have some experience of a bird. Now, we're not talking specific types of birds, just the idea that these things that flap their wings and have a beak is called a bird. We've assigned a name to that in the English language. Okay? Now, you might have to reiterate the word if you have a second language learner, Spanish or Creole French or Filipino, whatever. So the word might be new to them, but the concept or the actual image of something might be pretty familiar. So you really don't have to teach bird. This is a bird. Can you say bird? This is a bird. Okay? Most of them should have that somewhere in their schema, somewhere in their memory of learning. But as you branch out, especially with older children, you can find out what do they already know. Do you remember when I said the K, that's the sign language for K, W, L? The K is for what they already know. And you might jot down some things. They know that a bird flies. They know there are different types of birds, but they may not know specifically what kind. They might know that a bird lives in a tree or a nest. They might know these things. On the other hand, they might not know these things. That's why you ask questions. So for a 1-year-old, you might say, "Where's the bird?" And a child who's not quite got all the words might look up to the sky and point upward, indicating that they understand the concept that a bird is higher than or in the air. There's a location. They know that the bird isn't going to sit next to them at the lunch table. Okay, so you already can see what a child knows by demonstrating an answer to those questions. Now, if they don't know, then a teacher writes that down and says, okay, my child does not know where a bird lives. They may not know how a bird flies. All right? And so your students, you write this based on what your students know. And then each of those circle bubbles is where you write down what you want them to learn. That's the W. What they know, now what they need to know, or what we should want them to know. And in those bubbles around this topic, in those content areas, you're going to create activities and lessons that get them from this is what I know, this is what I don't know, combine that all, so what do we learn? Okay, what I already know, what do I want to know, or what do I want them to learn, and what did they learn? Okay, so the KWL, which is also used a lot in elementary school, can actually also be applied in early education. So I'm going to give you an example of an integrated study plan that I implemented as a homeschool mom during COVID, which many of you did. All right, welcome to the bird study. All right, so this is Maya. Maya is, during COVID, was about 6.5 and found herself in kindergarten. Now she's already a struggling learner and reader from pre-K. And so when COVID kind of took us out in her first year of kindergarten, it made for a huge struggle for her to learn. As an educator, I kind of knew what I needed to do in order to help her. So we transformed our entire dining room into a classroom. Our walls looked like bulletin boards. My husband was thrilled. Okay, and all of a sudden we read a book by Mo Williams called The Pigeon Has to Go to School. The reason we wrote this book is there's two reasons. One, I had to show her that she still had to go to school even though she wasn't in a physical classroom. That was tricky for kids to assimilate that information and then transfer that knowledge. The second reason is in my backyard, and I'm not sure, maybe we can go on a field trip. Let's see if we can do this. All right, let's see. We're going to try to go on a field trip, so hang on with me here for a second. And let's see. Outside of my backyard, oh, of course. So outside of my backyard, I have over 60 wild ducks. And I don't think we can see them now. Nope. Okay. So that field trip did not work as planned, and we know that when we work with children, things don't always go as planned. But I have a lot of wild ducks, okay? Lots. And in Florida, we have a lot of birds, right? And so Maya got on the kick with me because I feed the ducks every morning. Maya got on a kick with me as to all about ducks and birds. So we read the book, The Pigeon Has to Go to School by Mo Williams. Super simple book. I encourage it. So this study started Maya's interest in birds and binoculars. And you can see a picture of her with binoculars. And we have a few sets of binoculars. Binocular means you look in both eyes, right? Bi means two. Monocular means one. So we talked about those vocabulary words, right? They're emergent learners. And we started reading a bird book. And my mother kind of caught on to this theme that we were doing. She sent me a bird book about this big, and you open it up, and it's all the birds of Florida. All the birds that are registered as Florida birds. Maya was thrilled. So Maya took her bird book, which you can look in the slide at the bottom picture to the right of it. You can see the Florida bird book, and then Mo Williams' bird, the book that we were reading. And we started a study that lasted about 2 weeks, but now she's 8.5. And she's still, to this day, we go out, we take our binoculars, we look for the various birds, she listens to the calls of the birds, she feeds the birds, we look at the ones that are fishing, like the ospreys, the anhengas, and the cormorants, and the foster terns, and she's taking all these birds and she's learning, what's that bird and what's that call? All right, and so we started a bird study. So then one day we said, let's go outside. We're going to do a field trip. We live around a little retention pond, and we're going on a bird watching. So we took her interest. This is her interest, okay? Not mine. This was hers. And we went out and we started to look for birds, any birds. And she took her binoculars and we went around and she's like, what's that bird? What is that bird? What's that bird doing? And we started to create a list in a notebook of the birds we saw. We could find them and match them in her book. We listened to the birds. We observed the birds in their natural environment. Now, one of the fun things, because our pond is stocked, we have a lot of fishing birds. And so we have storks, egrets, great blue herons, Egyptian geese. Those are bizarre looking animals. As I said, osprey, cormorant, and anhengas and foster terns. So all of these birds are fishing birds. They go in and they eat the little fish. Well, at this point in the summer, when we started or right around COVID, in April, May, you can see that there's a little bit of a beach front. It just means the water is low. Well, because the water was low, we could find a footprint of the birds. There were different prints, animal prints. And so we started taking pictures and trying to figure out which bird footprint matched the bird. All right, math, science, social studies, ecology, life science, language and literacy, emergent literacy, vocabulary, eye-hand coordination, creativity, conversation. That's 11 or 12 different content areas, all because she read a book called The Pigeon Has to Go to School. All right, and so we went bird watching. After we went bird watching and down the line, we had her write her information. She documented some way that she learned something. Now, if you've got really little kids, they could be scribbling on a paper and doing what's called dictation. So I want to stop here for a minute. When a child is creating something in the dramatic play, something in the block, something in the art area, I don't want to see product. I'm not interested in the product. If a product happens, that's super. But I don't want her to draw a picture of a bird. I don't want her to feel like she's in a box. If that's not the intent of the art, it's process-based. Creativity should be process-based. And you walk through children in their creativity and their process. Now, young children, you might have to give them the words, right? If they're 1 and 2, oh, I see you put green paint. That kind of looks like the grass we were outside, right? Or a 2-year-old, I see that you're painting with brown paint and orange paint and green paint. You want to tell me more about what you're thinking about? We don't say things like, what are you doing? What's your picture? Why did you do that? You want to have what's called an open-ended question. And the best way to do that is 3 words. Tell me more. Tell me more. Or tell me about that. Or I see that you used pencils and crayons, or you tore up paper and glued it. Tell me more. And if they can't because they haven't got all their words yet, then you assist that by making some suggestions. Oh, I know that we just were talking about birds. Were you thinking about birds when you make that? And you'll see for children that are not yet verbal, they'll do this, or they'll do this, or they'll do this. They'll have these wrinkled noses, right? Now, once children are able to speak and able to label their creations in the dramatic play, block, or art area, your job as the teacher is to write down what the child says. All right? Your job is to write the dictation. You become the secretary of the class. Now, pre-K4 is a little different. Pre-K4, a lot of them are doing mock writing, pretend writing. But anything that below that age, you have to do it for them. And you need your best printing and your best penmanship. And so you write a note, or you write a script, or you write the words, and you can write what Maya wrote. Okay, you can see here I wrote, the pigeon has to go to school. I wrote that because actually I was going to use that piece of paper, and she stole the paper from me. So that's why the title looks so good. But you could do that. But if you look, she drew Mo Williams' bird, and she put her name in, because I always tell children, if you are an artist, you have to put your name on it, because you could be famous someday. Plus, people want to know who made their great creations. And she dictated to me, bird in water in grass. Bird in water in grass. And so we finalized our bird study, and we each drew this picture. Now, do you think that we just stopped with birds? No. As I said, she's 8.5, and we're still moving forward. So an integrated study means you find something of interest for the age that you're working with. Here's a great one. For 2-year-olds or 1-year-olds, the theme could be, or the topic could be, shoes, or things we wear on our feet. And you do a whole unit. Why? Because 1 and 2-year-olds take off their shoes. They would much rather be barefoot than be in shoes, right? And so I have a whole unit on that. I can give you some hints on that down the line. But that could go for almost 2 or 3 weeks where you just, everything's shoes and boots and slippers, and you could have a pajama day. Because what happens is once you start something like this, it expands in thought. All of a sudden, it might go from bird watching to chickens and chicken eggs and chicken farm, right? And then all of a sudden the children are like, hey, let's learn about the farm. Well, let's go to the farm. Let's call LaPorte Farm in Roseland and have them bring some chickens to our school, right? Let's see what eggs look like before we cook them and after we cook them. Let's taste different types of eggs. And all this because somebody showed an interest in a bird. See, listen to me, listen, I know this has been a while on this slide, but listen to me. When a child has an interest in something, they will stick with it longer. And you guys are no different. If this is interesting to you, you're going to stick with it longer. If you got bored 2 minutes into this slide, you probably already fast forwarded it and you missed this whole section. So what we're trying to determine is, what is the purpose of the plan? What is the purpose of the plan? Not just activities that you thought up at 10 o'clock on a Sunday night when you showed up to work on Monday morning. That's not a plan. That's called panicked chaos. Oh my God, I gotta think of something. Right? So the educational purpose, something you're trying to accomplish, means you need to know why you do what you do, and why do children learn the way they learn? And how do you think they learn best? Where did we think about that last week? Oh, that's right. Educational philosophy. I told you that word's going to come back and haunt you in your sleep. You have to know why children do what they do, developmental milestones. How do children learn best? Educational philosophy based on theorists. And then the next part is, what are their goals? What do you want them to learn? What do they know? What do you want them to learn? And what do they learn? Okay? And so having that purpose, there has to be a purpose in why they're doing it. And let me just tell you right now, fun is great, but fun is not the purpose. Remember what I said the first slide? The purpose of early education is to foster competence in dealing with life. Because if you don't foster the competence, they're going to feel frustrated, they're going to feel aggravated, and they're going to feel hopeless. I think that's a test question, by the way. So you might want to remember that. Now, down the line, one of the assignments is going to be creating a goal, and then having some objectives to that. But let's talk goal for a minute. A goal is a broad statement. Here's a goal. I want to lose 35 pounds. That's a goal. It's a broad goal. Okay? Or I'm sorry, I want to lose weight. That's a broad goal. I want to save money. That's a broad goal. Okay? I want to finish this class. That's a broad goal. A little bit more specific is, I want to lose 25 pounds. I want to save $100 to buy a new phone. And I want to pass this class with an A. See, those are a little bit more specific. All right? But it doesn't mean you're going to do one activity and get straight to the goal. Okay? Think about any sports. When you have basketball, you dribble the ball down the court, and it takes a bunch of movements passing the ball around for somebody to throw it and hopefully get it in. Now, there are more times they miss the net than they get it in the net. Let's try soccer. All right, you got the offensive line, you got the defensive line, you got the guards on the side, you got the goalie. Everybody works in tandem in these small steps. It's planned, it's calculated. I kick the ball to Nilda kicks it to Frederica, she kicks it back to me, I kick it towards the goal, we win the game. There's all these small steps that have to be started before you can get to the goal. Okay, saving $100. I have to create a plan to save $100. I just don't walk in and put $100 in the bank. Then I didn't save anything. I already had it, right? And so same with education. You have to have small steps to get to the goal. You have to have, so if the goal is developmental milestone, fine motor skills, children will be able to use fine motor skills independently with scissors, you know, or something like that. then what are the activities that you have to do to get that child from there to here? All right, and so that's the things you're going to be working in your lesson plans. So the small steps are called objectives. An objective is a step that reaches to the goal. Sometimes we call these learner outcomes, like especially in elementary, showing what the children know. Okay? And that's kind of that KWL, what they've learned also means what they know. All right? So if you have a child that's learning to walk, and you provide opportunities, holding their fingers, having them balance on things, they fall down. You provide verbal encouragement, facial encouragement. You say, yeah, come on, let's try again. You got this. Come on, walk to me. And they take those first 2 steps all by themselves, and everyone yells, goal! The child learned to walk. But does that mean we never practice walking again? I'm 54 years old. Trust me, I'm still practicing walking. All right. So you create those objectives to reach a goal that is based on the developmental readiness of the child. Developmental readiness is different than developmental age. I'm 54, but my developmental readiness might be a different age. Okay. And you do that through content. Now listen to me, children are very capable learners. They want to learn. They really do. They're wired that way, okay? And so it is our responsibility to provide resources that are available to children. Now, if you don't provide structure in the classroom, adequate, appropriate resources, and opportunities to learn, guess what's going to happen? You're going to have a classroom management nightmare because children have to have boundaries. They really want them. That's why they act out, and they just don't feel safe in whatever boundaries, are chaotic. And so if you have a plan for the day, then you watch your classroom management settle down, and you feel less stress here in your own self and less stress with your kids. So creating applicable content is vital in your classroom. All right. Part of that is creating methods, strategies to deliver the curriculum content. Now listen to me. In this case, curricula is the plural of curriculum. One curriculum, many curricula. All right. Some of you, we've already talked about this. You said you're using Frog Street, creative curriculum, conscious discipline is a social emotional component, beyond centers and circle time. There's many curricula for various schools. You might have a Becca or Firefly, or and it depends on what your philosophy is. Will depend on the curriculum you use. Within the curriculum, there are usually methods to deliver it. All right. So I might be in the belief that let the children learn, and I'm going to guide and facilitate the children. Some of you want to do more of a direct instruction, which is what I'm doing now. I'm telling you what you need to know without any real input back from you guys. So you have to come up with some methods to help you do that. After you come up with some methods, and we can talk more about methods a little bit later because it's very specialized in each of your programs, okay? But they're pretty much, it's play-based with observation or direct instruction or a combination thereof. From there, you have to assess that children are doing what you ask them to do, and are they learning what they're supposed to learn? I have still so many programs that are not observing and recording children's behavior and assessing their abilities. All right? And it's evidence of children's knowledge acquisition. Acquisition. Did they acquire the knowledge? Did they learn the information? And are they able to show you what they've learned? So here's some kiddos that were creating something in the block area. I love Connor's head. Connor's like 17 now. But this was the block area. and they had what are called unit blocks. Those are the big wood blocks at the bottom. Then they used small individual colored blocks for decoration at the top. And when I spoke with the children, I said, wow, guys, you added a lot of color in this. Tell me what you were thinking about when you were building this structure here. And Connor says, this is the coolest fort ever. We were building it because the Army guys are coming. Now, his little buddy next to him didn't say a whole lot. He doesn't speak a whole lot. Connor did most of the talking. And so I had to stop Connor and ask the other child, whose name I can't remember right now. It's many years ago. And I said to the other child something to the effect, can you tell me what you were thinking when you were building this? Because it might be different. And he really didn't say much. And I thought, all right, well, I'm not going to get a whole lot of assessment on the second child because he's not able to verbally tell me. So instead I had him show me. Show me how you built this. Show me how you did this. So I take pictures. You can take a lot of pictures with a school camera. Please don't use your cell phone unless you have, because then it's on your phone and it's a liability and it breaches confidentiality. It violates your company's policy of not sharing information about child when it's on your cell phone. So don't use your cell phone. Try to find a camera that's in your school. Anecdotal records means you're writing down what you saw. Connor said this, and you write exactly what Connor says, okay? They stayed in the center for 20 minutes from this time to this time. You're writing exactly what you see is an anecdotal note. Documentation could also be a portfolio of work, combination of different things. It could be a formal thing. It could be an actual store-bought assessment where you're testing kids on things. Not my favorite, but they are important, and there is a place for those. So as you go into your early childhood profession, when you start interviewing for jobs, you could say, what are ways that you assess children's abilities? It's very important you know that, okay? It's very important that you know the difference between activity and lesson plan, that it's a weekly or a theme versus integrated with topics, okay? And various ways. How are you going to get children from what they know to what they need to know to the goal through those objectives? And then you determine how they're doing by creating these assessments. So I also do video assessments. I'm not sure this one will work. We'll try it. Let's see.
Hey, it hit your foot. It went all the way through. Okay, try it again. Oh! Line up the holes. There you go. You are engineering today. I love your persistence. Why do you think it won't go all the way down? No? Maybe you should take one of the light brown ones away and then put your hole down there. Make sure all your holes are lined up. Success! Well done.
So you can see when a child feels successful, there's just this visual of, oh my gosh, I did it. I persevered. I stuck with it. I continued with trial and error. I was encouraged by my teacher to continue in my task. Now, we used words like engineering, and we used trajectory, and we used lining up holes, and there was math, there was science, there was problem solving, there was communication, there was encouragement. It wasn't, oh, good job. It wasn't, hey, you did a good thing here. There was specific words that I used. Let's line up those holes. hey, I can see that you're struggling with trying to figure out why that didn't work. What if we tried this? It's okay to suggest things to kids, so it keeps that frustration threshold kind of balanced. Vygotsky, who's a theorist, says that there's a zone of proximal development. If something's too easy, then they just get bored with it. If something's too hard, they get too frustrated. So you want to find something in the middle. And so by providing creative, constructive criticism and support, you're able to help a child navigate those real tough situations. Hey, let's try this. Can I show you how to do this? Will you let me? You don't want to do it for children. Like, notice I didn't go down and move those blocks, right? By the way, this is called marble run. Marbles are a choking hazard to children, so you have to be careful. But they do make some that are size of like ping pong balls. And this play space, she played with this for a long time because she has that stick-to-itiveness, that persistence, that perseverance, that she's going to get it done. Now, my assessment was, can she build this structure two-tier and make the marble go all the way down? Okay, and she did. So that was my video assessment. That was my documentation of learn, discover, and grow.
Hey, it hit your foot.
All right, so the children that you are planning for, you need to know their developmental abilities. This is why when children come into your program, they should have a basic developmental screening, and you can do that with a developmental milestone checklist. You can print those off the internet, and if your boss doesn't have any, print them for yourself. Say you have 1-year-olds. You go on and you print a basic developmental checklist, and then you say on August 17th, this child was able to do these things. That way you know where your children are, right? And then play is so crucial. Play is how children learn. All you have to do is give them items. Now, we don't do a lot of pre-made plastic toy kinds of things. I try not to. I try to use natural woods, glass, metal, cardboard, paper, that type of things. Do I use the bears, the plastic bears? Yes. But I really try to transform my classroom into things that could be used anywhere, right? Sticks and Play-Doh that we create on our own, and mud and sand and leaves, and I try to be more of a naturalist. That's just my philosophy of education. It may not be yours. And you may not have that advantage when you're starting in a classroom. You just kind of get what you get. But the whole premise of that conversation is that children have to play. Some children may not know how to play. Okay, there's stages of play, and one of them is the onlooker. They're just kind of doing this on the side of the wall, and they're just watching what's going on. They're absorbing and taking it in. Okay, and then you have kids that are solitary players. They just like to play by themselves. Now, from toddler into early 3s, a lot of that could be solitary play. Like, this is mine, you're not touching it, it's mine, and I don't want to share. That's called egocentrism. It's a normal stage of development. This is why we don't force sharing. We encourage it, but we don't force it. Okay? We teach sharing. It's a taught skill. It's a social skill. So while they're playing solitary or associative, where they're playing next to each other, I'm sorry, parallel, where they're playing next to each other, associative, where they're kind of playing together, and cooperative is where they're working together to get a goal done, right? All right, so when children are playing, that's how they learn. Your job is to invite yourself into the play and support the learning experience. And hopefully I'll show you some of that when we meet in person or online. So before you plan, you got to know who the children you're working for. You got to know that play is important for their learning. You need to know what curriculum and content subject matters you're supposed to be using in your particular program. Then you need to look at what the local national curriculum standards are. Okay? If you're working in the public school district, those curriculum standards are going to pretty much be set to you by the Department of Education. And then the Florida standards, if you're in the state of Florida. Okay? So once you know what all of that package looks like, then you can create your activities and your lesson plans. You have to understand, children, that each child is unique. Listen to me. Piaget, okay, Jean Piaget, famous theorist in early education and child development, all children pass through the same stages of life, but they go at their own pace. This is why you have 9-month-year-olds that are walking and some that aren't till 14 months that are walking. This is why you have some 2-year-olds that can cut with scissors and some 4-year-olds that still cannot. This is why you have some children that can be toilet trained by the age of 1.5, 2, and others that aren't toilet trained till 4.5. They will all go through the stages of development at their own pace. Now, when you're working with children with what we call varying abilities, meaning they have some type of unique learning way, could be a disability, it could be a giftedness, they might go through stages of development much faster or much slower than what's called typical or normal development on those milestones. You also need to know that. I've had some really gifted kids, I've had kids that were in my pre-K4 already reading at kindergarten, first grade level. I have to meet their needs. I can't just expect them to wait and then let the rest of the class catch up. So you have to look at all of those developmental evidence when you're planning for children. Every child learns in their own style and they have their own strengths. You can't assume that kids are going to learn the way that you learn. Although you should know what your own learning styles are, and there's a lot of surveys on the internet. Okay, there's a great one I want you to look up. I don't think I put it in the PowerPoint, but the guy's name is Howard Gardner, like a person in the garden. Howard Gardner has a whole research study at Harvard University. You can still read it on the various learning styles. I'll give you a summation. Some people learn kinesthetically. They've got to be moving and hands-on. Some people learn visually. Some people learn auditorily. Some people learn analytically, like they're very good problem math solvers. Some need the whole picture idea. Tell me the whole thing first and then I'll do it. Some like to work privately, right, by themselves. Don't give me a group project. I do better on my own. And some people love to work in groups. Got to have other team members playing. Some like to have music, some like to have silence, some love to be outside in nature in order to learn, okay? And some need those closed cubicles in order to stay focused. And every child is different, just like you're different. And as you learn their learning styles and where they are developmentally, then you can plan. Now you might be saying, oh my God, Ms. Perry, this is so labor intensive. I just wanted to play with kids. I didn't know this whole preschool thing was going to be this intense. Guys, you have a human brain that you're responsible for. Of course it's going to be this intense. Aren't you glad your elementary, junior high, and high school and college teachers spend so much time learning about who you are so that you can be the best you can be? Infant, toddler, preschool teachers, you're just as important. You have to know this stuff. You have to take it seriously because you're transforming a child's life. Oh, and they're paying you to do it. Okay? So understand the children And then as you understand each child and their personality and their strengths and their weaknesses, then you study the group. You observe all of those children, not only as individuals, but as a community of learners. Now, I'm telling you right now, you're going to get a classroom where there's some children that don't play nicely. You don't like them, they don't like you. You're going to love them as the Lord loves them, but you may not like them all. I had a little boy that I did not like at all. This kid drove me to drink. I swear to God. He's now, I think, 25. But back in the day, I thought, it's going to be me or him. Like, I'm probably going to quit. Oh, wait a minute. I can't quit. I own the center. So, one of the great things about co-teaching or having another teacher in the room is that you can divide your class into the pairings of groups that work best with that teacher. All right. And so this particular child, I would say to my co-teacher, go get your boy. Go get your boy, because like I totally cannot deal with him today. And he can't deal with me. We just don't have, we have a personality conflict. All right. Do I treat him with disregard? Do I treat him with disrespect? Do I not show love and affection? Absolutely not. But I know that he works better under her tutelage than mine. And then she would say, oh, you got to take this girl because her and I don't click. That's the benefits of team teaching, co-teaching, where you work together. But if you have an assistant who kind of works under the lead teacher, that still can work. So know your groups and know your limits. All right? And understand and support play. I have so much I'm going to share on my Blackboard Collaborative, or if we're in person, I'll show it there about the play space. All the different opportunities about what we do and how we support play. You have to let children play. That's why I asked you to write about your early play memories and why you think it's important that you play as an adult. If you're not playing as an adult, you're going to not play in the classroom, or you're less likely to play in the classroom because you've forgotten how to play. You forgot the joy that comes with being goofy and fun and silly and music. Because play is fun, it's freely chosen, and it's guided by you. Now, does that mean you let the children run mamby-pamby throughout the classroom? No. Again, if you have a play-based center, then you might not really have a theme. It might just be opening the centers and guiding the children through learning, and then you add different props and toys and things. If you're theme-based, then you're going to have themes throughout the room. The block area, dramatic, art might all be all around that theme. You still set the stage and you still design the classroom. That was why you have the homework of design a classroom. So that the noisy centers, like the dramatic play and block area, are next to each other. The messy centers, like the art area and the sand and the water and science, are near each other. And the quiet areas, like the fine motor manipulative math toys and some of the quiet art and your reading areas are together. So your classroom needs to be set up to support that play. This weekend I did a play space, and my art area was closer to the front door with the science so that we could get to the bathroom for the water. The quiet area was all the way back with subdued lighting, and I wish I had a slide here, I didn't put it on here, of shadow and light play. It was phenomenal. And then the big noisy stuff, the blocks and construction and the cardboard forts that we build, was all kind of in the middle of the room where it could be really loud and boisterous. So how you set up your classroom directly affects how children are going to translate into that play opportunity. So this is an example of bringing those play experiences outside. A teacher, we took a piece of plexiglass board, this one was white, and we put it on the toddler fence line. Notice where it is. It's at the child's eye level. Notice that the teacher has dropped herself down to child's eye level and allowed them to paint outside. What a great opportunity. It wasn't product-based. It was, here's some paint, go paint. And guess what? They ended up painting on those tires, which were our gardens. We hadn't quite set them up. They painted on the fence posts. They tried to paint on the ground. It was a cause and effect. But in essence, they had a blast experiencing with the paint. Inside, we use easel paint. You can see the little girl with the little ponytail. She's now in 2nd grade. And she was licking the paint because they don't know not to do this. She was 1 at the time. And we had finger painting that's non-toxic. And so we wanted to show the difference between child-supported free play and then guided play. Now this guided play was taking a risk. This guided play, teacher allowed our children to take the mats. We have yoga mats on our playground so kids can use them as play spaces or dramatic play. I get all the yoga mats at thrift stores where people donate them. And the children wanted to go slide down the slide head first. Now, I know what you're going to say. Miss Perry, my boss, won't let us do that. It's a liability. But did you notice who's next to the slide? It's the teacher, right. The teacher is next to the slide. Notice where her hand is, literally supporting where this child is going to be. Okay, their head is up. They went down the slide. Now, this is only a 4-foot slide, and we had mats at the bottom. See, we prepared the area for what's called risky play. We guided the play. We provided support to this play. I do have videos if anybody's interested in watching her take care of this. And so we had about 5 kids sharing the mats, going down. Some went on their bottoms. Some that felt more daring, like my boys, went head first. Some, we didn't let them go backwards, and we didn't let them go like standing up. Those were barriers that we said, no, you're not doing that. So we guided their play, and they had a ball. This is another free play that you can do in your schools if you have a chain link fence. We took old t-shirts and cut them up in spandex fabric. We have a recyclable center up in Melbourne. I will tell you more about that. It's called the Adventure Resource Center by Dr. Walter Drew and his wife, Kitty. It's open to all teachers. You can go up to the Adventure Resource Center in Melbourne when they're open, and you buy recyclable materials, and they get them from manufacturing companies. It's so cool. So what you see here are scraps, listen to me, bathing suits. There's a bathing suit company that throws all their scraps away. So we get them all spandexy and stretchy, and there was some that were glittery and different shapes. And our children did fine eye-hand coordination, fine motor with weaving. Now you can look at the top, and they just kind of looped it over. But some went in, some tied them. And notice there are 2 playgrounds, so the toddlers got to experience what the preschoolers got to do and demonstrated what that looked like. Now you have the peers teaching the peers. Lots of learning going on in this one little thing. Now this one, the kids wanted to make hats. I don't know even if it was a theme, but these 2 girls wanted to make hats. The one that's looking to the side with the yellow and the black, that was a bumblebee. She wanted to make a bumblebee. And the other one was going to be a bat. That's the wings hanging out the side. And so we guided their learning. They wanted to make the hat. We sat with them, and then they came in my office, and they wanted to show me their hats. I don't know the topic, but that was something they wanted to do. They chose it. So support play by watching and waiting for children to make a choice. Observe what they're interested in. Let them play mindfully. If they're getting out of control or using the equipment improperly, don't yell at your children. They're learning. You come over and you say, you know what? I see you're sword fighting with the blocks. Show me something else you could do near the floor so no one will get hurt. I see that the block tower is getting to the top of your head. Now, we talked about safety, that it can only go up to your chest. If you would like to build something over your head, let's find another toy, maybe the paper blocks. The cardboard blocks we can build up really tall. Or the pegs. Let's see if those won't hurt you. And acknowledge and encourage, very similar that I did with Maya. Now, there's a word that's down below called scaffold. Scaffold means to build layer upon layer on previous knowledge. Okay, so once the children knows something and they want to learn and you're trying to teach them and they learn it, that learning, that topic, that item, that skill now is built foundation for something to be built upon it. It's called scaffolding. You need to know that word. You'll hear it in Vygotsky's theory, you'll hear it in child development, and you will hear it in early ed as you go higher into coursework. So you need to know that word. As I meant earlier, we talked about Vygotsky. This gives you an idea of how scaffolding and Vygotsky tie together. A child can do today with assistance what they'll be able to do by themselves tomorrow. Their current knowledge, the zone of proximal development. If it's too easy, they get bored. If it's too hard, they get frustrated. So you want to find the equilibrium so that once that's established, they can go beyond their reach. Teach them what they need to know now so they have the skills, practice it so they know it and learn it later. Okay? And so knowing what Piaget says, all children go through the same stages of development at their own rate. Know the zone of proximal development. Once you understand the philosophy behind this, and if you've not taken CHD 1220, this will all be Greek to you. And you'll need to study it a little bit. If you've taken CHD 1220, it's in chapter 2. Go back and look at that chapter again. Because you have to have that foundation, students, to know this foundation. I'm taking what should have been your current knowledge, your schema, what you know, and I'm trying to scaffold into curriculum what you should have learned in CHD 1220. If you didn't learn it, then this is going to be out of your zone of proximal development. It might be a little harder to learn. See how that translated there? So as you're planning those scaffolding activities, you need to determine, all right, I'm letting children have that open-ended play, but I'm realizing that Bernadette is really struggling. And I might need to take that child and do some one-on-one work, small group work, maybe with 2 or 3 kids, right? Or maybe I need to do a large group session like a circle time. Maybe I'll do it outside under the tree or inside. And you can do so. I did circle time. I did 3 circle times a day. I did a welcome circle time, which was about 30 minutes. Coming in from the playground for transition, I did another 7-minute circle time to kind of get the wiggles down and settle them down. And I did an end of day circle time to get them ready to go home and clean up the room for dismissal and quiet them down before they left with their parents. So I did 3 circle times, okay? But having an opportunity to say, all right, this child, or maybe it's a child that needs extra work to do because they're challenging. They have to have that challenge. It allows the teacher to concentrate on a particular child's learning and their process. And it gets the child to participate with that one caregiver, with that one teacher to learn that skill. Now, infant teachers, a lot of the stuff I'm talking about is really kind of 1-year-old up. Infant teachers, you're going to be doing scaffolding all the time. That's just what you do, right? You got a 6-week-old. They're learning to learn sensory. They're learning to make eye contact with you. They're learning voices. They're learning to start lifting their head on tummy time. And so you're planning the activities for infants. But observing your infants, knowing, hey, they've reached that milestone. I'm going to challenge them a little more and do this milestone. But you have to know your milestones. Babies don't just lie there in cribs and in swings all day. Because if they do, I'm going to find you because that's not what you do. Okay? Infants are growing so rapidly. My infant teachers are actually developmentally more important than my 4-year-old. And yes, I said that out loud. Because you have a brain that sets the course for the 4-year-olds. Birth through 3. Birth through 3 is the most crucial brain development. Let me say that again. Birth through 3 is the most crucial brain development, which is why infant through 2's teachers are the most vital teachers, and they have to know some things. They got to know this stuff. Now, children are what are called literal learners. If I say, this is my witch's brew, I'm going to drink the poison, and a kid has never had an experience that's dramatic play, they might go, oh my gosh, right? And that's a little dramatic. But they're literal learners. if I say, oh, go jump off the couch, then they're going to jump off the couch. So hear this. So when you create classroom rules, listen to me. When you create classroom rules, you want classroom rules of what they can do, not what they cannot do. So we want to put what you can do rules, such as walking feet, quiet voices, hands together or hands to ourselves. We don't want to put things, don't run, don't smack, don't yell. The minute you say those action words, they're literal learners. They don't hear the don't, they only hear what they're supposed to do, and they're going to what? Run, smack, and yell. Okay, they don't benefit from that abstract idea. They have to be literal, so you have to be intentional. Intentional with your activities and intentional in what you say. This is why ditto sheets don't work, lectures don't work, teacher-directed art doesn't work. That's all for parents and teachers. That is not for the benefit of the child. Okay? Children believe in the 5 senses, what they can see, taste, hear, smell, and touch. Okay? You want children to learn, engage all their senses through play, and you will have a kid who just blows up with learning. Don't just tell them, did you know that apples are round and red? Did you know a peacock only opens its feather? They may not even know what the hell a peacock is, or what a feather is. Did you know? Or, listen to me, I'm trying to teach you. We're going to read a book about anteaters. So pay attention to the book because I'm going to ask you questions about anteaters. That's all abstract thinking. The more you keep kids moving and engaged, the more you listen to children talking, the more you will learn. So I gave you some links here on national and state standards, local standards. As I said, you have the Florida Early Learning Standards, you have the NAEYC Code of Ethics and Standards, and Head Start Standards. So if you're in a Head Start group, you're going to have a little bit of those federal standards that you have to comply with outside of our local standards. And as you grow professionally, the items that you see in here, and I hope you click on each one and bookmark them, are going to help you in and out of the classroom. In the classroom, obviously, out of the classroom as you do your planning, your reflection, your meetings with your directors and your curriculum specialists and your assessors. You might have meetings with therapists if you have children with varying abilities. So the more you know, the better off those kids are going to be because they're going to have an educated, caring teacher. All right? Now, I want to just transfer what I've talked about into messages that you can relate to. You already set up lessons and plans for your day. Okay? You might plan, if you have your own children, you might be planning getting them ready for the school the next day. You set their clothes out the night before. You make their lunches the night before. You check their agendas, make sure their homework is done. They have a bath or a shower. That's the plan. We might also call it a routine, right? And so you have to have a routine in your own life. So say you're going to the grocery store. Hopefully you have some type of grocery list. I know I do. Matter of fact, I'm so good at my grocery list that my children and my husband write it down. They don't go shopping for me because I'm actually a control freak when it comes to grocery shopping. I know the place, I know the best prices, I know the type of value I want to get, I know the products that work the best for what I cook. I know what I want, so that's my task. And my husband says, good, because I don't like to do it. So, you know, planning for a trip. You have to plan to make sure you have everything for that trip. Sometimes you might have people come over your house and you're like, oh my God, people are coming. We have to get the house cleaned. We have to get the food ordered. We have to display everything, whatever. If you are an unorganized hot mess in your personal life, it many times transfers to the classroom. I have seen it more times than I care to count. This is why a lot of times in my classes, I have to do a check-in with you. Who are you? How are you doing? What's going on in your life that might affect your classroom? People say, oh, you don't bring your home life to work. Oh, please, we all do it. But we can mitigate the circumstance if we have our kind of lives a little bit better organized. Okay? Financially, if you're struggling financially, you might be struggling at work because you need that paycheck or they don't pay me enough and get frustrated. Okay? So that's why knowing what happens outside the classroom is what happens in your classrooms. So again, let me just recap a couple things. You've got to understand the developmental milestones and create that goal by having measurable objectives. That's where your learning standards come in helpful. Learning measurable objectives. Decide what activity you're going to do and why. Why you're planning this for these particular children. Now, listen, you can use a lesson plan every year. But if it doesn't match the children you're working for, it doesn't matter. The kids aren't going to do it. And then plan in advance what your materials, equipment, and the space you're going to need. And does it matter what lesson plan form you use? Well, the form and the way that you write it is going to be really dependent on the agency you work for. Now, if you're building your own school down the line, we can entertain that discussion. You can email me, call me, and we'll do a consulting on what plan you're going to use, what format. All right? If you want to find one, you can find preschool lesson plans online. It depends if you're going to do integrated versus direct instruction versus a theme, okay? So use those keywords when you type it in. And remember, infant, toddler, preschool lesson plans look differently. They're not the same. An infant learning spaces are messy and feeding and sleeping and gross motor and personal time. Those 5 centers are very different than you're going to find in a pre-K4. You're not going to do art and you're not going to do necessarily science and reading or language arts with an infant. You're going to have a set schedule time and what the teacher, infants, your teachers, you're going to write down what you're going to be working with those infants. So an infant learning lesson plan is different than a preschool toddler lesson plan. And again, getting ready is crucial. What are you going to do before to get them ready? Let them go and let them play and listen carefully, observe and provide those encouraging hints to kids to problem solve. And then after, try to just accept what they've created, generate discussion, document what they've done. And again, be prepared, be on time, and be flexible. Because you could have the best laid plan and the kids won't want anything to do with it. In which case, you've got to be able to shift on a dime. And if you're not good shifting on it, I'm excellent. Like, I don't try to brag, but that's my gift. If something's not working, boy, I can switch into music. I can switch into drama. I can switch into art. I can switch into a science. I can switch on the fly. Of course, I've been doing this 35 years, right? Or 30 years. I don't know. I've been doing this a long time. That's why co-teaching works. They might have a gift in switching really fast. If you see all of a sudden the Indians are going wild, you might say, all right, we need to get them calm. What's a good strategy? Let's do this. Okay. Experienced teachers know what may need modification, and sometimes it's on the fly. Inexperienced teachers may find flexibility being difficult because you're just trying to keep it together. So inexperienced teachers, please speak with experienced teachers. And for my students that have never stepped foot in a preschool because you're just doing your associate's degree already, I really, 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 really encourage you to go volunteer at least 2 or 3 hours a week. Sometime, not nap time. But really, really, really start putting into practice through volunteering. Plus, you're going to need volunteer hours for your practicum for EEC 1946, 47, 48, 20, and EEC 2948. Those practicums, you've got to have the in-class experience anyway. So you might as well go volunteer now while you can. So the good news is you're not alone. We are in a network of people that do this for a living. thousands and hundreds of thousands of you. This is why I ask you to join like FLACY, okay, or FACM, or ACIS, or any of the agencies that support early childhood educators, where you get to have meetings. I have a meeting every month. It's the play chapter. And we meet every month and we talk about how to incorporate play in our classrooms. And it's mind-blowing. I still learn things because you have people with PhDs that offer free classes. It's great, okay? And remember, the more you do it, the more you practice it. The more you fail and learn from that, the more you succeed, just like your children. You can do this. And if you have any further questions, jperry@irsc.edu. I hope to hear from you guys soon. Thank you guys. I know this was a long session. Thank you so much for hanging in there today. I'll see you soon.